Infertility grief. Where do I begin? There's so much. First, I'll start by saying that I know grief, right? We all probably know grief. I think most of us can say we've lost either someone or something that we've loved in life, and we've had to go through the process of grieving that thing. The anger, the sadness, the depression, the bargaining, and the acceptance, right? And because you're grieving that one thing, that one person, you can focus on that to move through these steps. And typically, when we grieve a person, there's people around us, right? There's family, there's friends, neighbors, people making us casseroles and sending us cards and flowers, and they're there to help support us and hold our hand. The difference with infertility grief is that unfortunately a lot of society doesn't believe that it is grief or doesn't understand that it is grief, but it's very much grief. And I think if more people understood it, they would know how to support us, right? And, doing this alone, going through infertility, with just yourself or your partner, and you're the only ones grieving together because you haven't told anyone, makes it even harder, because grief isn't meant to be traveled alone. And we never really know when it's going to hit us, right? Because grief comes in waves. It's not like we go through one step, move to the next. And it could be we're in a public place. It could be that we're around family and we're easily triggered. And so we spiral trying to cope with that. And I think that if this was more widely accepted as grief and people knew how to support us, it wouldn't hurt as bad. The other thing I'll say is that with infertility grief, it can feel invisible, right? You can't see the baby that is not here anymore. To others, it's just, you didn't actually lose anything, right? But to you and to me, you lost everything. The vision you had of your family, of your life, that maybe started when you were a little girl, carrying baby dolls. I think a lot of us have this vision of what our life will be. And when infertility hits and we realize this isn't going to play out the way that I thought, it can be debilitating. And that is a traumatic event. If you think about it, it's a very sudden, unexpected thing that happens to you. Therefore, it is trauma. And then grief coupled with trauma, that's a lot for one person or two people to go through. So for me, I found that talking about it is truly the best thing that you can do for yourself, whether it's telling a therapist or maybe that one family member or one friend that you trust, or even just starting with your journal and telling your journal. You've got to get this stuff out. And if you take baby steps in talking about it, finding your safe people is really important. I'm not saying you go tell every single person or that insensitive friend or neighbor that you think needs to know. Not everyone needs to know. But your safe people can help you get through this. And you got to figure out who those safe people are. They may not be who you think they are. It may be someone that you just met who is also going through infertility. Support groups are a great place to start sharing and start telling your truth to people who can truly validate it and understand your pain. I think focusing on gratitude has also really been helpful for me in moments of why her, not me, this isn't fair. I try to think about all the things that I have to be grateful for. And sometimes it's just the fact that I have a roof over my head, or that I'm healthy, or that I have a husband, or that my parents are both still living. Things that I think sometimes we take for granted. Infertility teaches us to have gratitude for those things. And then the last thing I would say about coping with infertility grief would be just forgiving yourself. This is not your fault. There's nothing you did to deserve this. So if you can take that shame off of your person, or even if you're blaming your partner or blaming yourself, you think your partner's blaming you, like try to forgive yourself, for whatever those feelings are. And I think a big issue I had when I was first going through this grief, and I knew it was just me and my husband for many years, that we didn't tell anyone, is that I shamed myself for those feelings, like the jealousy, the anger. I thought, I'm just a bad friend. Why can't I be happy for my friends? But the moment I realized that I was grieving, I was able to forgive myself and accept that, no, actually, I'm grieving. Like, picture a woman sitting in the front row of a wedding who just lost her husband. Picture her. You'd forgive her if she got up and walked out, right? You'd forgive her if she was sobbing. There's no difference. This is grief, and we're all gonna feel certain ways, and that's okay. We're gonna find our way through those waves, and we're gonna just keep swimming. The next big topic I want to talk about is genetic grief, because this is even more unique. This goes even more deep than infertility grief. And that is the loss of your genetics being passed on to your child. And being that I use donor eggs to conceive, I have a daughter who's now 3 years old. I used to worry when I was told I would use donor eggs, that vision, that perfect vision I had of my husband and I, like his best traits and my best traits, because there's no way they could get my worst and his worst. Like, that's just not how it works, right? We had this make-believe vision of this really tan, blue-eyed kid, which we all know brown eyes cancel out blue eyes anyway, typically. There's a very rare chance that our child would have my blue eyes. But they would definitely get his athleticism, and they wouldn't get my weird toes, because there's no way, or my widow's peak that I hated. They would only get the good stuff, right? And I think we all do that, right? It's like, oh, what will our kids look like? And we create this like fake vision we have no control over that, right? We don't know what our children are gonna look like at the end of the day, right? And so processing that and understanding that I never actually had control over genetics when they were mine was a big part of like how I got to grieve this. If anyone tells you need to grieve your genetics 100% before moving on to donor conception, they're crazy, because that's not possible. I think that if you can get halfway there, and it takes real work of like letting that child go, that vision that you had of that genetic child, saying goodbye to them, writing them a letter, creating a ceremony, throwing flowers into the ocean, planting a plant, like having that grief, like ritual, whatever that is for you, letting that child go is a big step in genetic grief, because you've got to do that to make space for this new vision, right? The new possibility. Once I started really thinking about my genes, and like, they're not all that great. Like, to be honest, there's a lot of autoimmune in my family. We all have like really bad allergies and psoriasis and eczema and you name it. Every single person in my family has some sort of like illness, right? But I had never thought about that. I was so focused on, oh, well, my child is gonna get this from my dad and this from my mom and this from me. And that's really important to me because that's like my family. And I will always give credit to that feeling because that's real. But at the end of the day, if I was able to choose an egg donor who I knew was healthy, had a strong family history, was fertile also, but maybe I could find like something to connect to her. Maybe it's just the fact that she's also part Irish, or part German. Maybe it's the fact that she also likes to swim, like things like that you can connect with. But also within choosing that donor, I could say, oh, she doesn't have any autoimmune in her history. I get to, wow, that's cool. I get to kind of like clear that out, and that's not a worry anymore. And then I think the other thing is too, like at the end of the day, we have so much more to pass on to our kids than genes. I mean, let's be real. Like, think about it. Like when you think about your mom or your dad, it's not like, oh, wow, my mom's blue eyes, they're just so beautiful. I mean, sure, that may be true. But when you think about your mom, you might think about the way she loves her family, or the way she cooks, or just how she's a good friend to you. And your dad, maybe it's his sense of humor, maybe it's his work ethic. Those are the things that matter, right? Those are the things that we want to pass on to our children, and those are the things that you have influence over. And if we can shift our way of thinking from what we're losing to what we are gaining, then I think it can help you move through that grief process. I think too, at the end of the day, like, genetic grief is going to be there. I'm not going to lie to you. There's moments still, because I think I'm always like, oh, I'm so fine. You know, I love my daughter. She's amazing. And honestly, like, when I look at her, I don't even think about she's 25 or 50% my husband's genes and 50% the donor's genes. But then she's also like technically 25% me because of epigenetics and influence and nurture versus nature. So really, she's 25% donor, 25% me, 50% my husband. I don't do that math. I don't look at her and think about those things. I look at her and I see Florence. Even my best friend the other day said to me, she said, I don't even like see Jonathan, my husband, in her really anymore. I just see Florence. She's her own human being. I'm like, right. And that's what we want for our children. Why would we want mini-me's? That's so boring. Like, we want unique individuals that get to be themselves, their true selves. And to me, it's like so much more interesting and exciting that I don't assume anything about her. I don't assume she's going to have something that was in my family tree. I'm surprised and delighted by all of the uniqueness that she brings. So I think that, you know, the grief, like I said, the grief is still with me, right? So there's times where maybe, you know, someone will make a comment about her looks or just things that they're not thinking. And sometimes I'm totally fine, and I'm very outspoken about this topic, so I'm very quick to say, well, actually, she gets that from her donor, you know, or actually, let me explain epigenetics to you and the fact that she actually could smell like me, she could burp like me, she could laugh like me, and she does all those things, actually, by the way. She's very proud of her burping, because that is a big thing in my family that I didn't realize was that important to me, and it is. The other thing, spoiler alert, that widow's peak that we talked about, she has one. And my husband's family doesn't have a widow's peak, and neither does the donor's family history from what I can see in all of the images. I don't know how to explain that. But she has parts of me, and the biggest part she has is my heart. And gosh, thought I was gonna get through this without crying. I want you to know that this stuff is hard. I will never say that it's not. Like, grieving your genetics is real. But if you can make space for this new, incredible child that will love you, will give you all the things that you dreamed of, but maybe a different visual version, then why wouldn't you do that, you know? I am her mom 100%, and I don't need her to look like me. I think she's the most beautiful human I've ever seen in my life. I don't need her to carry my genetics to love her. I just need her to be her. That's it. So will this pain ever go away? I don't know, but I do know that it gets better, it gets easier, and it takes hard work. It takes facing these fears and this sadness and pain straight on. It takes finding support, and you've got to find other people that have been through this, that understand it, that can hold your hand and validate and say, I understand what that feels like. There's nothing more powerful than that. But you will survive this. There are worse things that could have happened to me in life, and this is my struggle. This is my thing. We all get a struggle, right? I'm okay. I could not be happier, and to be honest, I would not change a thing, because it wouldn't be her, and she's my everything. So will you ever feel that this grief is gone? I don't know, and I know I keep saying that, but I do know that you will survive, and I do know that you will love your child more than you could have ever imagined. You might actually love them more than you would if they were your genetics. And I know that sounds crazy, but this process to get here and the appreciation and gratitude that I have for my daughter, I don't know if I would have that had I not had to go through some really hard stuff. So I'm grateful for that too. That's on my gratitude list. That pain taught me a lot of things about life, about love, about compassion, about sacrifice, and about being a mom. So if I can say one thing, it's that DNA is not required to be a mother, and it's not required to be the best mother and to have the strongest bond with your child, because I'm living proof. Thank you.